Amanda, I'm so excited to get to speak to you today. I recently dawned on me that I was seeing these. I think I'm friends now with people that are sending their kids off to college. And
Yeah.
the sheer amount of like, here's where it started, here's where it ended. I was like, this is not my era's dorm room. So clearly you hit on something incredible by starting Dormify. So I'm excited to chat with you today.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So what gave you the idea to start this company and kind of explain what Dormify is?
Sure. So first, Dormify is basically your go-to guest destination for outfitting a dorm room, an apartment, a home bedroom, really any place that you want to infuse your own personal sense of style and self-expression into. But we really started the business focused on college because that is such a pivotal transition point from leaving home to creating a home away from home and having this whole new stage of life where you're, you know, leaving the nest and becoming an adult. Um, but the way that we got started, I was shopping for my very first dorm room freshman year. I went to WashU in St. Louis, and my mom and I were spending literally 24 hours looking for stuff for my dorm room. I was a camp counselor at the time. I had no time to do it. And we struggled to find twin XL bedding, which is the required size for college, in styles that were like even remotely acceptable for an 18-year-old. Everything was very youthful at the time. And of course, the times have changed dramatically, but we saw that there was a huge white space in the market and a huge opportunity to create a brand that was really dedicated to this moment of moving from home to college and creating your first space away from home. So my mom's background is in advertising. She started her own creative agency. So I grew up in this very entrepreneurial family. She ran the agency with my dad. And together we kind of brought this dynamic perspective of both the student going to school as well as the parent sending off the student to school. And we decided to go for it. We were standing in Bed Bath and Beyond at the time. And I was literally like in one of those aisles saying to my mom, why doesn't a brand exist that's like meant for me? And we should design our own line and sell it to college students. And she said, okay, let's do it. So not every parent will say that to their 18-year-old child who's starting a very new experience. But we actually started by creating a blog and got our proof of concept through that content site, and then use that proof of concept to then go out and figure out how to manufacture textiles because neither of us had any experience doing that. And it's kind of the equivalent today of just putting up a TikTok channel that's all about college life and dorm decor. But that's really how we got started.
Did you feel like once you kind of dove into the complications of sourcing, manufacturing minimums, you were in over your head, or did the two of you say like, this is an adventure, we're going to keep following the path?
I actually often think and say that our naivety was probably to our benefit because we weren't up against all of the, well, what if we don't hit the minimums or who are we going to go to? We were just like so green that we use that to our advantage to really like use our persistence and passion for the idea to sell a manufacturer on working with us when we didn't even have a website or even like a business card, which at the time was unheard of. And the way that it actually went down was, as you know, Fifth Avenue, like in the 30s and upper 20s in the city, is all the textile buildings. And we just went from floor to floor and explained what we're trying to do. And from there, ultimately found one person to work with us. But that was really to just get our foot in the door. So my lesson or takeaway there is like, doesn't matter who you get started with. It's just a person or a resource that helps you learn along the way. And then from there, you can always look to who the right partner is, but you just have to get started somewhere.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that because you started with one person, how many people said no? Or you're crazy, or this
Many.
is a dumb idea.
They actually liked the idea. They're like, that's cute. I understand, but no one was willing to take the risk.
Right.
So there was a lot of no's, but we actually started with a print on demand product so that we didn't have to invest in any inventory. And our very first product line was this line of wall prints that were all letters of the alphabet, and each was designed by a graphic designer. So it was kind of like a unique piece of art. And in that sense, we could sell something without having to invest in it, and the way to get started again. common theme.
Yep. So how long has Dormify existed for?
Idea was back in 2009, and we officially incorporated the company in 2011. So about 13 years, which is crazy for me to say, but been doing it for a while.
Wow. So what have you seen throughout your 13 years that has surprised you that you thought going into this with your naivety that you were just like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is what I have to deal with."
Many things have surprised me. I think there's always like challenges that are thrown your way, of course. Um, I think what will surprise any entrepreneur is anytime you accomplish something or make it to a milestone, it's just the next milestone that you're then working towards. Um, that you never really feel a sense of like completion. It's always like, what's next? What's next? So what's been difficult, I think, is the fact that we started the business in a world that's very different than what it is now in terms of social media and how trends are created and how trends are shared. So that's something that like back when we got started, our audience and just the global like world, they didn't have access to inspiration in the way that we do now. So it's a lot easier, one, for students to even figure out how to outfit a space, but it's also really easy to go out on the internet and find whatever you might be looking for, or an Etsy creator that has something really novel, or even like custom print something yourself. So it just kind of like raises the bar for Dormify to come up with really innovative product or really on trend product as well. And it just changes how we go about product development and our merchandising.
So let's talk about that challenge because I feel like the world is flat now with the opportunities that you've suggested and now you're having to compete with either the Etsy shops or the competitors that Dormify might have. What
Yeah.
have you had to do to stay nimble and sort of adjust to this landscape that I feel like on a dime switches?
Yeah. It's a challenge every day. It's like the main focus of my job, I feel like these days. But we've incorporated a lot of these designers or makers into our assortment as much as we can. So whereas in the past we would take inspiration from Pinterest and create our own line of wall decor, now we just go to student designers and creators who are selling their work on Redbubble or other websites, and we bring them to our site either to make something unique for the Dormify customer or just sell some of the products that or the prints that they're selling on their own site. So instead of competing, it's like, let's curate the best from the best and be the Dormify stamp of approval so that we simplify the shopping experience and not only offer like unique products. So we really have to draw the line between curation and developing innovative product that really drives our business. So what many people are surprised about Dormify when they dig a little bit deeper is that functional storage is really what drives our business. It's less about the aesthetics, even though our website, our social channels are all very aesthetic based and we design these really beautiful rooms. But that's what pulls someone in, and what they're actually buying is the functional storage. Things like our charging nightstand that you put next to your bed is a number one seller. And then innovative products like a headboard that attaches to the wall and also has a built-in charging port. These are things that are different, but again, back to the challenges, once you do something innovative, you get knocked off. So always trying to reinvent some of these products because the challenges of living in a small space don't change, but the environment and the competitive set around you do.
So what has it been like to work with your mom? Has it been smooth going, or have you had your bumps in the road? And I'm curious how the mother-daughter relationship plays into that because I don't think I could work with my daughter.
Well, and I'm curious how it's the same or different than working with a sibling too. Um, it's been different over the 13 years that we've been doing this. I think the business wouldn't exist if the two of us didn't do it together. I think there's great things that come with working with a parent and then challenging things that come with working with a parent. The great things are that you will never have a partner in business that you trust more than a family member, hopefully. Um, Hopefully trust. And I know that she has my back at all times and always has my best interest, not only as like a business partner, but she wants what's best for her child and wants to see me you know, achieve all of the things that she thinks I'm able to achieve. So it's been great to have her as a mentor and a support. And she's done this before. She grew her own business and knows what it takes to build a profitable business that is sustainable. She's done it for 35 years. The challenges of working with a family member, of course, is that you can't draw a line between work and personal time. And I think our generations also treat that differently. So she's definitely much more of the like, I'm okay with the blurred lines. I can switch back and forth between mother-daughter time and work time. But for me, I like to draw that balance a little bit more.
Do you say to her, like, between the hours of 9 and 5, there's still mom or mother daughter, and then weekends and nights, like, I'm your daughter?
I have said things like that to her in the past. She's not in the day-to-day of the business anymore. She sits on the board. So it's a little bit more divided now, but I will like go to her house for the weekend and say, outside of Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, like we can talk about anything but work. So just let's not bring the work conversation there. But I think because she also has run a business with my dad, her husband, like that's all she knows. So I can't blame her for that. And I'm just trying to set my own boundaries. But I think overall, like it's been such a rewarding experience. And like I said at the beginning, having both of our perspectives that complement each other has definitely contributed to our success so far.
So are you Gen Z or are you millennial?
I'm millennial. It's hard for me to like really understand Gen Z. I'm 33 now.
Okay. So you're a young millennial. You're a baby millennial. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So
Exactly.
I was going to ask you, like, what has it been like being a millennial, even on the
Hmm.
younger side, and you're making product for an entirely new breed of human?
That's one of our biggest challenges.
And or employing new breeds of
Yeah. Well, when we started, like I said before, I was creating product for me, for my friends, for my peers. It was simple. And like we were leading that and we were trendsetters. Today, I have to understand a different customer, create product for them, employ them, challenge them, grow them, et cetera, everything that you just said. And it's an interesting experience. The way that we do this for the product development part of it, we stay really close to the customer through an ambassador group that we have built. It's like over 1,600 college students across the country. We have direct lines of communication to them at all times. So we have a community on Geneva. We're texting them. We also always have interns in the office. So that's a really good way to stay up to speed. And like in the most basic way, I let our team really run our TikTok channel and our Instagram and don't try to intervene at all because they know best. So I think just like giving that freedom to the team to do things that they think make sense for this demographic is really important. But even within Gen Z, and now we're going to start getting into Gen Alpha, if you're 23 and just graduated, you're not really living in the same world as the 18-year-old. So there's a little bit of like, even within the Gen Z group, there's differences. So we just have to like really stay up to speed with them through communicating on social, like in the DMs, in comments, really understand what they want and adjust and pivot when we learn that what we're doing isn't quite right. But that's really where we try to differentiate ourselves and being super connected to the customer. Gen Z is tough.
What's a lesson that your Gen Z either employees or customers have taught you?
I think imperfection is probably something that they've really drilled into my mind. I'm personally a total perfectionist. So my personality aside, they want to consume things in an imperfect way. So they also want to put out content in an imperfect way. They don't want to over design, over style, over engineer things. They really want to show realness and have like a human element to our brand. So that's something that I've really learned from them. And I think there's also like an ongoing conversation about Gen Z in the workforce too. My team personally likes to be in the office, not 5 days a week because that would be unheard of, but maybe a few days a week. And they really value that in-person interaction and, you know, opportunities to bond and be doing like culture related activities. So always learning from them. And as my team grows, they're also learning from the Gen Alpha, who's going to be our customer soon.
What was COVID like? Because I feel like college life became incredibly not at dorms.
It was a very uncertain time. So, great news is that we actually grew during COVID, which I don't think anyone would have expected. But I mean, we had finished our big back to school photo shoot literally the day that people stopped riding the subways. And we kind of just packed up, moved full steam ahead, and students were unsure whether they were going to start school in the fall. And what was cool, even though it was kind of depressing, was all parents could do in this time of total unknown and like they just wanted to make their kids happy was have them have something to look forward to. So
Yeah.
we actually saw shopping start earlier. And then people actually did go back to school and we saw growth in like non-college customers. So gave us the opportunity to expand Dormify beyond the dorm room. And we talked about dormifying your house, dormifying your home, creating your own dormified room within your home bedroom. And that's something that actually is really relevant today. We're starting to talk about positioning the brand to a younger audience for like the little sisters of the college student, those that are looking to upgrade their room from their little girl room to their big girl room and really just dormify your space. We use dormify as a verb and it's actually been on Urban Dictionary since like 2013, which is really fun. To dormify your room is to style your space.
So what keeps you excited? Like 13 years in, what makes you get excited to like get out of bed every day and go to work?
What keeps me excited is that there's always a new challenge to take on, as we talked about, like the way that trends are created and shared continues to evolve. So it keeps us on our feet. We can't just do things the same exact way. But what I am really most excited about is achieving the vision that we set out to years ago, which was from day one, it's not just about college. You can dormify your life in so many different ways, whether it's for sleepaway camp or it's for boarding school or a baby nursery. We want to grow with the customer. And now it's actually really cool that some of our very first customers are having kids and there's an opportunity to, have them dormify their baby nursery and really just be the brand that is here during very pivotal life moments of transition. And it's more than just shopping. It's like a real emotional type of situation or moment. So that's what gets me excited to just continue to expand and do things in an innovative way. And honestly, like, this well, try to figure out how to manufacture things quicker, do things domestically potentially, but new tricks.
So I'm curious throughout this process because I feel like my first 7 years did not really have a personal life. Everything was just all in work, and I only kind of began to think about a personal life when I had my first kid. Have you, in building this, been able to hold firm and create a life outside of Dormify, or has it just been head down build?
I've made it a priority to have a life outside of Dormify. Because I think it's like running a marathon. Like otherwise I wouldn't be here today. So I have interests outside of the business and I try to, have a life. But also when I got married, similar to you having children, like there was someone else that needed me. But I think what's different for me, particularly is I started this in college. So I always balance this with schoolwork and doing other things. And that was a non-negotiable for me from the beginning. I wanted to join a sorority. I wanted to like do trips and whatever it was. So, I've always balanced it from the beginning. And I think just in my early 20s, I was doing things that my peers weren't doing. So that's what took away from some of the early years. But now I've built great networks and, great relationships, and I can have more balance because I put the time in the beginning. So maybe talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I think it's important. So
I think it's great that you've been able to do that because I feel like I still speak to a lot of founders who are struggling with that, and I found it, I feel like too late, in
yeah,
hindsight. And so I think it's great that you've had it. Was it hard to balance college and work?
We weren't working on it full time. So we had the very unusual opportunity to kind of work slowly on it. It was pre-social media. Like it was just that pressure to move faster wasn't there. So we were pretty intentional about like taking a slow start, and we didn't, raise a bunch of venture capital in the beginning either, because that's not like what our business is. We weren't going to check all the boxes, and honestly, we didn't even know anything about it. So that's why we didn't do that. But I was able to do it. I think where I sacrificed more was like early 20s living in New York City. I wasn't doing the things that all of my friends were doing. I was almost socializing with a different cohort just because that was better for the business, and we were going to start raising money. And that's more of the time that I sacrificed when things were like more legitimate as a business. But
Do you regret any of that, or do you look back now and go like that sucked, but it led to A, B, C, and D?
I don't regret any of it. I wish I was a little bit more like organized with how I spent my time, but time management is not a strong suit of mine. So
Same.
something that I started doing once I got a little bit older was through LinkedIn. Like it's an impossible way to actually remember who you know. I just started making like a Google sheet of people that I've met that I want to stay in touch with, and just curating down that list of people that like either I want to build a relationship with, had a great conversation with, and now I know who those people to go to are if I ever need help or have a question or need a connection to someone. But I don't regret any of it. I think I probably could have just used my time in a more productive way, but that's just me, and it's never going to change.
So I like to ask all my guests two questions at the end of every podcast. What would we be surprised to know about you, and a piece of advice you would love to pass on?
Something that people would be surprised to know about me that didn't know me when I was younger. I was a competitive cheerleader for 10 years, and I didn't grow up in the South, but I very much lived like what the TV show Cheer is all about, and traveled the country, went to the world championship of cheerleading. And I'm like a social outgoing person, but I'm not like a rah rah type of person. So that like really defined my childhood. But I think like taught me a lot of skills that are meaningful today in my career. So
I love that. That's
yeah.
fun. And
Yeah.
what's a piece of advice that either someone gave to you that was helpful or you learned and would love to pass on?
I'm not going to be articulate in saying this, but a piece of advice that has been recently on my mind that has stuck with me is that sometimes what you used to do doesn't work anymore. And I think being adaptable and being forced to pivot in a way that like you don't want to for the sake of the business, even if it's at odds with like what you think from a brand perspective, sometimes needs to give. So there's a difference between running a business that's not a well-run business and having an amazing brand versus a sustainable business. And I'm kind of at this stage in growth in our company now where we kind of have to make some decisions that I have to be okay with, but it's for the best for the business.
I love that you say that, because I was thinking about that the other day. Like we just did not participate in New York Fashion Week.
Mm.
And the only lift we ever get from New York Fashion Week is EMV, earned media value, like just
Yeah.
like chatter, social, tagging, mentions, press.
Right.
Because we would always show more elevated collections, maybe a little bit more expensive, it doesn't translate into sales, right?
Right.
We didn't do it this season, and I was like, do like should like I get to this conundrum of like, if I can't quantify it in like, is it
Yeah.
worth it anymore? And I don't know the answer, but it just got me thinking, because my stress level for the month of September was like at its lowest when it's usually at its
Yeah.
highest, and I got to go enjoy and be a part of Fashion Week. But I'm just like, does it matter? Maybe we don't need to do that anymore, you know?
I think it's a perfect example of what I'm saying. And you're like, oh my God, if I don't do this, what's going to happen? But you kind of just have to take that leap. And I mean, how did it make you feel? I'm sure that was very relieving to not have to do it, but also like weird.
It was weird and relieving, and like, I don't know, I guess we'll approach February as we see fit, but it's like, I'm just beginning to question every single move we make and the effort involved and what is the ROI, you know?
Yeah,
Because there was, I think in your industry too, there's so many you think you have tos, and then when you're just like,
totally.
wait a second, maybe I don't have to. What could I do instead?
Yeah.
Or, so I love that you shared that.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, even in a different example with customers, doing things that, like we base everything that we do around the customer. We want to deliver the most exceptional customer experience possible. Sometimes being able to scale that is at odds with what you're trying to do, but sometimes you have to like just take a few bruises. And because we're a pretty, scrappy team, I see all those bruises, and I just have to like remember that it's such a small component, or it's such a small part of the overall audience that we're reaching and speaking to.
Yeah. And is your end goal like this is what your life's mission and you want to do this forever? Or do you see yourself exiting at some point?
It's like my big philosophical question right now, figuring out what I want to do with my life. I'm like buying books to design my life, and I'm staring at them on my desk right now. I think I see myself doing something else in some capacity in the future, just because this is all I've ever done. Like, I think there's more that I have to give, and I will always have a role in Dormify. And maybe there's ways that I can, be a part of new ventures within the Dormify umbrella or something related. But I've always really loved hospitality. So that's kind of an area that I felt maybe there's something I can get involved in there. But I'm not sure yet. I'm literally trying to figure that out right now. And it's really great timing as I'm like, when do I start a family? What do I want to do with my life? What's my purpose? All of it. What's Dormify's end goal?
It's so funny because it's a conversation and a thought process that you probably never think when you're in the trenches and doing it that you're going to be 13, 15, 20 years in, and then you're like, what do I want to do
Right.
in life? Like I'm going nowhere with Rebecca Minkoff in terms of leaving, but I'm also like, what else?
Right. Right. Because there's always things that you can do, and you can add on, do incremental things. I'm very much still in the weeds of our business. So like it's hard for me to even imagine a role where I'm less in the weeds, but that's an upcoming goal of mine, to step back a little bit and really focus on the strategic vision. But what has to be done will be done.
Yeah. And so assuming everyone can go to dormify.com to get all their products.
Everyone can shop at dormify.com, and you don't just have to be in college to shop with us. We have people who decorate their guest rooms and their beach houses and, their 8-year-olds' bedrooms. So the world is your oyster.
I love it. Awesome. I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to today's episode. I also want to ask you to rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I know it's a pain in the butt, but it actually helps with search and algorithms. So if you love this podcast, it is an easy way to get it more visible and out there. I also want you to follow me on Instagram at Rebecca Minkoff, at RM Superwomen, and be sure to check out my book, Fearless, The New Rules for Unlocking Creativity, Courage, and Success. Thank you again, and you will hear from me next week.